Solving absolute value equations notes. We learned about absolute value already, where anything that's in the absolute value will come out positive. But now we're going to solve equations with absolute value in them. And there's just one little trick. When you're solving, like the absolute value of 8 is x, there's actually two numbers I could put in for x that would give me 8. There's 8, and of course there's negative 8. So to solve an absolute value equation, here's what you do. Take what's in the absolute value and write it down, and make it equal to the positive of this answer and the negative of that answer. So I end up with two answers, 8 and negative 8. Second example, what numbers could I put in for x which would give a solution of 8? So I'm solving for x here. Now, this is the absolute value of x equals negative 8. There's nothing I can put in here that when I take the absolute value of it, I would get a negative answer, because everything that comes out of here has to be positive. So if you ever have the absolute value equal to a negative number, it's no solution. Okay, that's impossible. Now, sometimes there'll be an equation inside the absolute value sign. I'm going to solve it the same way. I'm going to take whatever's in the absolute value, and I'm going to make it equal positive 8, and whatever's inside the absolute value, I'm going to make it equal negative 8. And now I just have two equations to solve. So for this side, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, which would give me 3. That's one answer. And on this side, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides and get negative 13. So there's two answers. If I put a 3 in for x, 3 plus 5 would be 8. If I put a negative 13 in for x, negative 13 plus 5 would be negative 8, but the absolute values would make it positive. So absolute value equations have two answers. Here's another absolute value equation. I have 5x equals 30. Again, whatever's inside the absolute value, you're going to write it down twice. Once making it equal to the positive of the answer, 30, and the other time making it equal to the negative of the answer. This time I'll just divide both sides by 5. One answer is 6. And divide this side by 5. This answer is negative 6. And if you think about it, if I plug negative 6 in for x, 5 times 6 is 30. The absolute value of 30 is 30. If I put negative 6 in for x, 5 times negative 6 would be negative 30, but the absolute value makes it positive 30. On the back, here I have another equation equals 50. So I'm going to take 5x plus 10, the stuff that's inside the absolute value, and I'm going to write that twice. And I'm going to make one of them equal to 50, and one of them equal to negative 50. And then solve them both. So subtract 10, I get 5x is 40, divide by 5, I get x is 8 as one answer. On the other side, I'm going to subtract 10. That's going to give me negative 60, and 5x, divide by 5, and I'm going to get negative 12. Now, notice I got two different answers, okay? There are times, like on the previous page, where the two answers I got, one was just a positive 8 and one was negative 8. It was the same number, one was positive, one was negative. That happens sometimes, okay? Like here, one answer was 6, one answer was negative 6. But there are other times where the two answers I get are not going to be a positive and negative same number, where they're going to actually be two different numbers. So that's like the example we just did. I got two different answers. So you have to be careful. A lot of people make the mistake of they solve one of these equations and get 8, and then they go, oh, the other answer must be negative 8. But when there's a more complicated equation inside the absolute value, it often ends up being two different answers completely. So just be careful. Here's another example. The absolute value of negative 6x plus 10 equals negative 40. Hopefully right away you caught that an absolute value can't equal negative 40. So this is no solution. The last example Now notice I have something outside the absolute value, this -3, and I have -120 over here. Some of you might be thinking, I can't do this because absolute value can't be -120. But this -3 over here, I have to get rid of that first before that applies that this can't be negative. So I have to get rid of multiplying by -3, so I divide by -3. So I'm left with 2x plus 10 in absolute value, and -120 divided by -3 is 40. Well, when I divided by that -3, I made the answer positive. So now I can solve this. So now I would write down 2x plus 10 twice. Once equal to positive 40, once equal to negative 40. So now I solve them. Subtract 10, I get 2x is 30. Divide by 2, one answer is 15. Don't just think the other answer is -15, because this is a more complicated equation, and it's probably not going to be the same answer. So subtract 10, I get 2x is -50. Divide by 2, that's -25. So there's another instance where the two answers are not just going to be the same number, one positive, one negative. So the key to these problems are get the absolute value all by itself if there's stuff around it that's not inside the absolute value. And then you're going to write two equations. So you write what's in the absolute value down twice and set it equal to the positive answer and the negative answer. When you do that, the two absolute value symbols are gone. Okay? Once you write the two equations, you don't have to write the absolute value symbols anymore.